This is a Culture Inject production. The Nevers Podcast presents Firefly, Back in the Skies.
Can't look. No power in the verse can stop me.
Hello listeners, and welcome back to our retrospective series Firefly, Back in the Skies. I'm Laura.
And I'm Tig, and this week we are watching War Stories. Wash, angered by Zoe's close relationship with Mal, convinces the captain to take him along on their next away mission. Unfortunately for Wash, the mission does not go smoothly as hoped when Adelai Niska decides to take his opportunity to avenge himself on the crew for past grievances. This episode initially aired on December 6th, 2002.
Which seems like an eternity ago. So our cast and crew, we've got the usual players with some guest appearances from Michael Fairman, Catherine Kendall, Rolando Molina, John Dunn, and this episode was written by Cheryl Kane and directed by James Contner.
I do love this episode. It begins, as they all do, on Serenity, with Simon reviewing the data he collected on River from the 3D neuroscanner last week in Ariel. Shepard looks over his shoulder, musing about the warrior poet Shan Yu, who Simon refers to as a psychotic dictator. Book cites a Shan Yu quote that suggests the way to learn about someone truly is to torture them, and wonder if that was the purpose behind the brain surgery done on River.
Elsewhere, crime lord Adelai Niska, last seen in The Train Job, is having another traitor tortured, also alluding to Shan Yu. His assistant, Victor, interrupts him to announce a nearby Firefly-class ship that might belong to Malcolm Reynolds, the man who reneged on a business arrangement with Niska. A delighted Niska orders his man to fetch the culprit.
I think this is one of my favourite cold opens in the whole series. Just the way it counterbalances the two references to Shan Yu is just, it's classic Whedon, and I love every part of it.
Yeah, I like how you have, obviously Book first talking about how you only really meet a person when, you know, they're pushed to the edge. And then it's interesting how you see someone as kind as Book talking about how he's obviously intrigued by this prospect. And then someone as, like, psychotic as Niska also talking about the same, like, philosophy. And it's like, for two men who are so different to be talking about this same, like, idea is a very interesting thing to see.
Kind of viewing the same idea, but from two drastically opposed viewpoints. It's very clever to balance that all out so well. Back on Serenity, Kaylee playfully chases River around the cargo bay after the girl took my apple, despite Jane having contributed a crate's worth to the ship's stores. Amid the noise, Inara urges Mal to respect the privacy of her imminently arriving client, a counsellor of some political importance. Mal reassures her that he won't cause a scene like the last time in Shindig, where he tried to sword fight someone for her affections. But Inara is also concerned about the other crew ogling her client.
I love the pitter-patter of tiny feet in combat boots.
Yeah.
That's gotta be one of my favourite.
No, absolutely. Like, this episode has so many just, like, iconic lines, and that is definitely one of them. Another one is coming up in a bit. But
it's nice to see River kind of being normal and just enjoying time, you know, with Kaylee.
I think another great thing about this episode is I think this is one of the episodes that really has kind of the looming spectre of continuity over it. Not only is the villain of the episode, like, relating back to a prior course, but we see everyone's like, why is Jane bought all these apples? It's like, being as a viewer, we know it's him trying to make up for screwing them over in the past episode. It's very well done.
So later we see Zoe and Wash puzzle over Jane's generosity. Kaylee asks why Zoe and Mal always cut up their apples, and Zoe and Mal, who joins them later on, tell a war story about Griswold grenades, tiny pressure-sensitive grenades that were embedded explosives in apples by Alliance troops. Wash sardonically embellishes on the story, annoyed at the frequent references to his wife's long history with the captain. Mal vetoes Wash's idea to improve their profit from the medicine sales by bypassing the local middlemen, and Wash is surprised by this because Zoe had told him that she hadn't run it by the captain. this is our tension is building between Mao and Wash scene.
But I love the little story where, like, they think, oh yeah, and we bit the apples, and suddenly everyone just kind of ended at the rib cage. And Wash is like, just kind of turning to Kaylee, like, but it's okay, that these apples are healthy. They're really trying to make this story a bit less freaking horrific than it actually is.
Yeah, for the children, who are in fact both adults, but they are like the innocent ones of the crew. Yeah. But yeah, I love the whole, James being so generous with his cut. This is very unlike him, but he's obviously feels guilt, and I think in this episode across the board, you see him, he's like turning a new leaf and seems to have actually his true feelings and care for the crew coming out.
Very much. I think I mentioned it before, but I really do think this would have been the start of the Jane redemption arc if we'd had a chance to actually see it through. But yeah, so we then jump to the bridge where Zoe admits to Wash that, yes, she had mentioned it to Mal. Yes, Mal had disagreed. And finally, sadly, she had accepted it without arguing. And then lied to Wash so as not to upset him. This makes Wash all the more upset because of her casual deference to Mal and her dishonesty with him. Their argument is fantastic. It features one of, like, yet another absolutely iconic line for this episode, but it's just really the whole series. They're like properly going at it. And Zoe's like, yeah, because that's what this marriage needs. One more shouting match. And Wash is like, no, what this marriage needs is one fewer husband.
Yeah, that's what I've put. I've written, this marriage needs one less husband, and then I've just put, oof. Like, oof. Yeah. Oof.
There are very few situations where Wash can win a fight with Zoe, but that one is definitely round one to Wash. Jesus. That is brutal. We then jump to the Tams quarters, where River is fondly reminiscing about her afternoon of fun with Kaylee, but her chaotic thoughts intrude despite Simon's treatments. Elsewhere, Book is chiding Kaylee and Jane for trying to steal a peek at Inara's arriving client, while sneakily trying to sneak a peek himself, who turns out to in fact be a woman against the crew's expectations. While Kaylee babbles her admiration of Inara's client, Jane quickly departs with the now iconic, "I'll be in my bunk." Such a short line, but that's one of the most repeated lines, I think, in all of Firefly. Like, I've heard so many people drop that quote.
Yeah, I think one of my signed things has it. I'm just looking over. My figurine says, shiny, let's be bad guys. But my photo that I have signed by Adam Baldwin says, I'll be in my bunk, I think. Yeah, it's definitely one of the most iconic lines. And you know, it's so versatile. It's used a few times throughout this episode. Sorry. Yeah, I love how this is starting with like Book. He's being all like, you know, Book, and who's, you know, Inara needs her privacy. Let's leave her to it. And then the next second, he's like standing up, moving closer. Yeah. Like even Book can't resist like the temptation to be a bit nosy.
One slight thing, I always thought it a bit weird that, like, when, you know, there's the whole set of the joke of the bodyguard guy comes on and Mal's like, oh, hi, you're clear to the council. Like, I've never seen a dude that looks more like a flunky in my life than that bodyguard when he comes in. Like, everything about that guy screams second, maybe third in command. That was clearly not a counsellor. And you have to think, like, I know Mal is a bit of a sort of, you know, he's an old soldier. He's not one for socializing and whatnot, but you have to think he would have noticed that guy was clearly hired muscle. That was not a guy anyone would put in charge of anything.
Yeah, what I found funny was that, like, he greeted him thinking it was the counsellor or whatever, and then when she actually boards, there's no like, oh hi, I'm the captain, or he's just like stunned, and she don't give a damn. She's just with Inara and going off. But yeah, I like another line in the bit with River and Simon, where he's like, you know, you're my beautiful sister, and then she's just like, I threw up on your bed.
Yeah, that is a great one.
She's just, oh, bless him. Anyway, moving on, preparing the unused shuttle for their business rendezvous, Zoe and Mal discover that it's been sabotaged by Wash, who demands that he go with Mal to the meeting. He explains that he wants to take Zoe's place at Mal's side, so they don't bring back yet another tale of adventure-laden bonding. An annoyed Zoe leaves them to their mission, and Mal reluctantly agrees. Another great scene with these guys. My favourite line in this bit was Mal when he says, he's just like, in the middle of this husband and wife's squabble, and he's just like, he's like, I'm lost, I'm angry, and I'm armed. Basically, like, guys, can you stop pushing me to the edge? Sort your shit out, and, I've got a job to do.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Like, I love you guys, but don't push me to the edge, right?
Okay, so, yeah, in her quarters, Inara's massaging the counsellor while remarking that when she does choose one of her rare female clients, she does so because they are extraordinary in some way, and hints that the counsellor's gift is allowing Inara herself to relax and serve her own needs as well as the counsellor's. Meanwhile, Wash defends his assumption of Zoe's role to Mal and winds up hauling the merchandise to the meeting. As the milk run does go down, the middlemen are killed by men who suddenly arise from the sands to capture Mal and Wash. I'm not going to lie, I do think you could quite easily lose a minute from this episode by just cutting out that scene with Inara and the counsellor. Like, it literally adds nothing.
Well, it's a necessity, isn't it? Even if you wanted the conversation to know that, like, Inara... Because it's almost Inara saying she's never fully comfortable when she has, like, all her male clients, right? That she can never, like, really be herself. She's always acting, putting on an act. And this is, like, a chance for her to actually kind of relax and enjoy herself. But, like... Really, it's like the studio just saying, we need some skin, we need some hot action, let's just get a little scene in here, please, just so that people like Jane can enjoy a little bit of a little bit of action. But yeah, and then moving on to the Wash lugging the box.
I'll learn as I go.
It's funny because
I'm mostly learning about carrying. So funny.
Yes, I'm learning about carrying now. Because, if it was Zoe and Mal, they'd be, like, carrying one side of the box each and just walking fine and being fine. But Mal's just like, well, you're here, you can carry it. You insisted on coming, this is it.
It's quite funny, again, like, as the episode goes on, his kind of false bravado kind of builds and builds and builds, and then just absolutely crashes when they get kidnapped. And then you see him actually start to build up some real steel in his spine. It's interesting to see.
Yep, it's a good journey for Wash. And unfortunately, a torturous journey, but... So later on, Zoe becomes concerned about what happened to their missing crewmates. Book volunteers to accompany them, and at the deserted meeting site determines the weaponry used to take their people. Zoe notices the abandoned supplies and a burn trail left on the ground by a short-range craft, not commonly part of a spaceship, but of a space station. Adding up the evidence, she determines that Niska is behind the kidnapping. Good to see lack of brain cells Jane jump in and be like, hey, there's like burn trails here, and like this isn't this, it's like, oh, Jane has some knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, he's not great at socialising or, reading social cues or staying honest, but he is very good at what he does, which is shoot people and know things that are used to shoot or move people. Credit where it's due. And it's, more knowledge of, more showings of books, strange underworld knowledge. It's like, oh yeah, let's look at these burn patterns. This was clearly from a particular sniper rifle that I've obviously used lots of hunting rats at the Abbey. Like, no, dude, come on, Just tell us your story, man. There's clearly a lot going on there. We then cut to Nishka's Skyplex, where the kidnappees sort of bicker, with Wash becoming increasingly more and more furious about both the danger that Mal regularly exposes Zoe to and the fact that she obeys Mal and does these things. Wash questions Mal's assertion that his first mate doesn't blindly obey him, but Mal backs it up by claiming that he told her not to marry Wash. Niska then appears, and soon his torture begins with the Shan Yu-inspired zappy torture. But still, Wash and Mal spend the entire time continuing to bicker, all the while refusing to acknowledge the fairly uncomfortable situation they're in.
Then we see Mal notices that Wash's anger keeps him from collapsing, so he hints about a sexual history with Zoe. Wash, however, is sure this never happened and claims that Mal should sleep with her, just so that his wife could get past what Wash feels is a fixation on her captain. Mal accepts to keep Wash from breaking.
The way their bickering starts off quite kind of legitimate, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we're doing this." It was Mal, she's my wife. Why are you bringing her into these situations? It's like, oh, Jesus Christ, dude. And, then they start getting tortured, which is pretty messed up. And, that's the part where you see Mal stops being Captain Mal of the Serenity and starts being Captain Mal, army guy. He can tell that Wash is in a bad way. And he's really pushing to try and kind of press those sore spots to keep him awake and keep him conscious. It's kind of where you start to see that Mal, he really is... we hear all these things about how he's this, ultra badass. He really is actually... pretty hardcore. He is just as good as we always hear he is.
Yeah, at the end of that, where he's like, she doesn't do everything that I say, she married you. Oh. You're like, oh, did Mal tell her not to marry him? Because, why?
Yeah.
Which they discuss in the little later bit, don't they?
I believe so, yeah. And it's kind of hilarious that he's like, oh yeah, you just discourage shipboard romances because of your own issues. They're all just sitting there just thinking of Inara. No, he doesn't have any issues with shipboard romances. What are you saying, Wash? Meanwhile, back on the ship, Zoe is collecting all the funds remaining from the aerial job in order to pay off Niska to release her shipmates, counting on his perverse code to treat this as a business transaction. She turns out to be partially correct because the sadistic criminal whimsically offers to release only one of the two men for the price she offers. Expecting to be entertained to see Zoe's dilemma, Niska is disappointed when she quite rapidly chooses her husband before he can even finish his taunt. Instead, Niska has his torturer sever Mal's ear and give it to Zoe as a refund. It's not even that the actual scene where you see his ear get cut off that's gross. It's every subsequent scene, they make sure to shoot it from the side where you see the kind of deformed hole that's left in the side of his head. It just looks so gross.
Yeah, I was looking actually. I was like, they did a really good job with the ear prosthetics. Yeah, I was just gonna say because they're collecting all the funds, and again because of Jane's last discrepancy, he's just straight in there. He's not even this is my money, blah blah blah. He's just throws it in. You're like, and again, like you said, this would have been the turning point again of his redemption almost. But
yeah, he's starting to understand the value of the team and wants to kind of be part of it now. And then, yeah, she kind of strolls in. She's like, yeah, here's my money. I want my guys back. And he's like, yeah, you can have one. Like, yeah, great, I'll have my husband, thanks. Doesn't even question it for a second. Yeah, give me my husband. He's fine. Mal can survive on his own. He's all good. Give me my husband. Just walks out. So good. She's like, oh, I'm sorry. We're expecting more time. Nope. Give me my husband. Fuck off.
Because he's obviously into these games and these just messing with people, right? He loves torture, and that would be a form of torture, toying with someone. Oh, well, this is only enough for one person. Before he even gets into what he's trying to say, she's just him.
Yeah.
She's so great.
She is decisive as our Zoe.
So she chooses Wash because, he is her husband, and like you said, Mal can look after himself. So by the time Zoe gets Wash back to the shuttle, he immediately prepares for a rescue mission. The rest of the crew choose to assist Wash and Zoe, while Inara tries to gain assistance from the counsellor. Wash takes Serenity in for a precision stealth breaching, allowing the crew to board the station before the defenders can respond.
Yeah, they've pushed through the fire and they've survived the torture. Now he's like, chill, actually, I kind of like this guy now. We probably should go in and rescue him. Very cool. And the whole kind of call to arms scene where the two of them are getting ready and everyone's like, this is a dumb idea, you're gonna die. Well, I say everyone. Jane is like, this is a dumb idea, you're gonna die, you have no chance. They all get ready, they leave, and everyone's out there getting ready come on, let's do this, we gotta rescue the captain. And then he turns up covered in 6 different guns. Freaking Vera in arms. It's too much. Actually, no, I think it's about right.
It's about right. Vera is just, that's a pretty gun. I was looking at it I need it. Because I've made some for other people, but I need to make one for myself so I can actually display and keep, because it is just probably my favourite gun. I love as they walk onto the ship as well, and she just hands the ear in the fabric to Simon. He's looks, they're all oh my god, and I think it's Jane, isn't it? He's like, what are we gonna do? Clone him? It's
man.
Oh, Jane.
After Mal has endured further torture without breaking, Niska has a device affixed to Mal's chest which forces thin tendrils underneath his skin, causing extreme pain. The next scene in the torture chamber reveals that Mal has died. His tormentors revive him, leaving the weakened captain unrestrained on the table as they slice him with wire cutters. This scene is so messed up. Like, seriously, like, I'm not... I know if I was in a situation, I would break in a second. They'd be like, all right, we're going to talk to you now, and just hold up something kind of shiny and spiky, and they'd be like, you know what? Fuck it, I'll tell you what you want. What do you want to know? My PIN code's this. There's my home address. Have at it. Here's my keys. Just don't put that freaking tendril monster anywhere near my junk, please. And it's like, it's going, you can see all the things going under his skin. Ugh, fuck that. No. Not a chance.
I think amongst this, we have, like, in the last bit, all of them kind of, like, gunning up and ready for their entry. I love Book. They're like, you know, what's you know, the Bible's take on guns here and gun violence, basically. And he's like, well, you know, the Bible's fuzzy on kneecaps.
Yeah, another absolutely iconic line.
I just love it when Book comes out with stuff like that. And obviously when we see... You know, he was talking about all the guns earlier, and he's obviously got, like, experience with guns and, like, war and whatever. But at this point in the show, you have no idea what Book's actual background is. So it's just more and more intrigue of, like, yeah, what kind of messed up past has Book really had? So as we move on further, Zoe leads Jane and Wash towards the torture room. Book, Simon and Kaylee stay behind to prevent the station personnel from taking the shuttle. Simon's aim is poor, but Book expertly shoots the men's legs, as we said, and easily dodges return fire. Kaylee, however, is unable to return fire at all and retreats when pressed by enemy gunfire.
Then River, who has stayed out of the gunfight up to this point, appears and takes Kaylee's pistol. After a quick glimpse at the attackers, River emerges and kills all of the enemy troops with single gunshots while her eyes are closed, leaving a visibly shaken Kaylee and saying, "No power in the verse can stop me." Oh, such a great scene. Although two things really jumped out at me from this scene. One, Book just casually dodging gunfire and shooting a guy is boss as fuck. Like, he literally dodges a bullet. That's peak human feat, at least. Secondly, Zoe's like, all right, we need to hold this room. If we lose this room, we're screwed. This is a vital room. Hold it. So why on earth would anyone think Kaylee was the right person to make their final stand? Like, I'm sorry, if you leave Kaylee to defend your point of no return, you deserve to lose it. She is not a killer. She is not a fighter. Why was she even there? Like, give her a pistol to defend herself if she absolutely has to, of course. You don't want to leave her unarmed, but don't actually expect her to just randomly shoot someone. You're setting yourself up for trouble by doing that. Yeah,
it's, poor Kaylee. It is that kind of thing of, like you say, if it came down to the end of it, like, maybe she'd be able to, but, like, she's just the kind of person, she's not going to hurt anyone unless she, like, absolutely has to. And obviously she backs down. So, you know, then we have badass River, who's just, again, we're seeing, like, more and more of, like, what she's capable of. She just takes the quick glimpse at them and then, without even looking, boom, 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 off they go. And she's just so great because she's this, like, innocent character that has all this hidden stuff that we're finding out. And she takes the lines. She's an imitator, right? And we've seen that. And that's what we get here. We get that innocent line that Kaylee said at the beginning of the episode. And she says it after killing people. No power in the verse can stop me. And she says it in such a way. And you just have Kaylee looking at her, like, literally scared for her life almost, of someone who previously in this episode she's playing with and having fun with, like, their sisters.
So how can you go from, like, fighting over an apple with someone that you've seen just, like, take one glance into a room and then blind fire 3 times and kill 3 people? Like, that is not... We're talking about Book being able to dodge bullets, like, being able to just one-shot 3 guys after a second of looking. That is... beyond. That is, like, superhuman shit. That's, like, Hawkeye levels of accuracy, and that is fucking terrifying.
Yeah, because when Book because he, like, dodges out the way, and I was like, oh no, did he get clipped? Because again, I haven't watched this for a while where I don't remember 100% of it. Like I used to watch it like religiously all the time, like 10 years ago or whatever. So I was like, oh, like Book got clipped or whatever. And then when he comes back out, I'm like, oh no, he didn't. He literally just dodged a bullet. It was like that. But yeah, seeing this side of River is, I mean, it's awesome, obviously, but Kaylee's quite clearly very scared.
Yeah, and given how it was in a particularly tense situation at the time, that's just going to make it all worse. Like, she was already terrified, and then seeing this person that she's kind of friends with do something that freaky, it's like, this is all too much.
So now deep inside the Skyplex, the intrusion alarm distracts Niska. Mel uses the distraction to take out the torturer with the same tendril-producing device used on him earlier. Revenge. As Mal starts to beat on the retreating Niska, the torturer recovers, giving his boss a chance to escape. The rescuers arrive to find Mal being throttled by the torturer over a huge automated factory pit at the centre of the Skyplex. Though Zoe initially suggests Mal would insist on defeating the torturer alone, he protests and his crew quickly gun the man down.
I just love how Whedon has this ability to just completely flip kind of tropes on their head. Like, they come in, Mal's fighting for his life. It's like, hell yeah, I've got to do it. This is my hero moment. And so he's like, no, this is his fight. He has to do it. Like, no, it's not. Shoot this dickhead. I'm dying here. Come on. Who gives a damn about heroism? I want to live. I've got like 6 holes in me. I've died 3 times today. I don't give a shit about heroism. Shoot him.
Just help me, please.
So good.
I like, and how quickly she's great. Gina's great. So how quickly like she switches. She's like, this is something he needs to do on his own. It's like, no, it's not. She's like, oh, okay. It's brilliant.
So enemies all defeated except for Niska, who ran away like a chicken. Mal joins the crew in Serenity's cargo hold, where he fiddles with his reattached ear, courtesy of equipment supplied by the counsellor. Simon expresses discomfort at killing people, but Book reassures him that it's unlikely he did actually kill anyone in the gunfight. And in the dining room, in a very saffron-like display of marital devotion, Zoe serves her recuperating husband some soup. Mal enters to remind Wash of the agreement they made during their torture.
To Wash's objections, he explains to Zoe about their mutual burning sexual tension. Zoe plays along, and the war veterans awkwardly move as if to embrace each other. An irate Wash finally gets up, drags his wife off, and announces that we'll be in our bunk. The episode ends with Jane immediately descending upon the abandoned soup.
Free soup.
Free soup.
Free soup is the best soup.
So I think, so obviously hilarious. I love Mal fiddling with his ear, because it is, isn't it? Like, you have an itch or a scratch or like a spot, and it's like this temptation to itch it, but he's literally had his ear reattached. It's like, you don't want to lose your ear, right? Stop fiddling with that. It's like, I think I've put it on pretty good, but if you keep playing with it, you're going to lose it. And he's just like a little boy. He's like, oh, okay.
And I love how they played the whole kind of not quite kissing scene with Mal and Zoe. Like, just they purposefully made it so freaking awkward. And they're like, yes, we have to do this now. It's our sexual tension demands it. And it's like, oh my God. So funny, but so wrong.
It's so perfect. It's funny how, like, the two people, they've got such chemistry as friends and as, you know, like comrades and whatever. Yet you can clearly see that they've never, ever, ever, even for a second, thought about each other in that way.
Yeah.
The other funniest bit at the beginning of this is obviously the Simon part. The discomfort of, like, yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about having, like, shot people or killed people. And Book's just like, it's okay, son. I don't think you need to. I don't think you have yet. Like, you still haven't shot anyone.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side of all this comedic stuff happening, we have the Kaylee and River situation. So Kaylee's obviously off about this, but she's not told anybody, right? She doesn't want to tell Simon that her sister killed 2 people. Yeah.
Especially following that conversation.
Yeah. And then, so yeah, we're like, oh, they're going to be off for now, and they've gone from being, you know, really playful sisters, best friends, or whatever, to the end of the episode, Kaylee being literally like traumatized and scared of River. But River's like still this innocent person who doesn't understand like what she's done. So she's going to be weirded out and messed up because she won't know why Kaylee isn't like being fine around her. It's very very well done.
It is, yeah. Again, it's it's in the same way that this episode started with the alternate takes on the the work of Shan Yu. You then see it finishes with another kind of alternate version. We see River and Kaylee playing in sort of the second scene, but the opening of the episode is them in looking at each other in the cargo hold. No power in the verse can stop me. Ha ha ha. Apples are fun. And then in the same cargo hold, in the same positions with her up high and Zoe down below, Kaylee down below, and it's like all that tension is suddenly built up, and it's like it's the same location, same people, same situation, but a completely different scene. It's
and just about like the whole theme of the episode obviously being torture, and it's interesting because we go from like real torture to like the torture that kind of Wash is going through it, thinking about like Mao and Zoe all the time. And then at the end we have the comedic torture of having to watch Mao and Zoe saying very awkward things. She's so brilliant with "Take me, sir, take me home." She's just so good.
And then Jane's there, and like then he's just like, "That's just wrong. Like, I think everything's hot, and even I think that is messed up. No, that shouldn't be happening. Stop it."
Obviously, we know that Mao's a good man, and we all agree on that fact. But we also all agree and have talked about how, Mao also gets shit done. And if you push a good man like Mao to the edge, he will kill you or whatever. But I don't think he's... It's interesting, this whole thing about like truly meeting someone. And we have it with like Anara. She's saying that she doesn't ever really relax around any of her clients, and does she really, is her true self around the crew, or is she maybe only her true self when she's with Mr. Malcolm Reynolds? It's a lot of kind of like a lot of people wearing masks, a lot of people act, and like when do we really see their true selves?
Indeed. If you really think about it, if you kind of watch the episode, Shan Yu does really have a point, because you think about it, like Mal and Wash, they've been on this ship together for what, like a good few years. It's been a while, long enough for Wash to grow and then get rid of a terrible moustache. So they've been through shit together. Like, they've lived together, worked together. They've shared bread and space for years. But it wasn't until Niska took them in, chained them to tables and did horrible things to each other, that they really actually like spoke and really met each other for the first time. Like, if you really think about it, I mean, he's kind of right. Like, it was only when we were pushed to this extreme situation that they were really able to like be honest with each other and air this shit that must have been building up for quite a while, even if it wasn't really kind of on screen. There was very little of that tension built up through the episode. It was really just this episode that there was that much tension, but it was there. And like now we see it all come to a head, and it's like now after that they are at a much better place than they've ever been. But it took being tortured for that to happen. It's like, I mean, he may have been a violent sociopathic dictator, but Shan Yu may have had a point.
Yeah, and I think the majority of characters go through some kind of breaking point in this episode, because we see, obviously, Wash reaches his breaking point in hearing enough about these war stories and hearing enough about, everything that Mao and Zoe share, and he reaches the breaking point where he actually starts being a dick. Well, not being a dick, but he gets to that point where he's like, all this tension is rising. And then, you get them like really hitting their breaking point, being tortured and like hashing it out. And then you've got, like, Jane already kind of had his breaking point last episode and is now like meeting his true self, or we think. And then we have Kaylee. Her breaking point is like being faced with like harming another person, and she can't do it. Like, that's her true self, which we know is her anyway. Like,
cinnamon roll. Yeah.
So it's interesting how, through this episode, we see kind of the majority of them reach some kind of breaking point and seeing what their true self is. And Kaylee sees River hit some kind of point, although River's not kind of like the rest. Her brain is messed up and we don't know, 100% still what she's been through. But for Kaylee, she's kind of like, is that the true River? Is that the River that's underneath and can pop out at any time? Terrifying thought. Let's hope none of them, meet someone called Miranda.
Thankfully, that's not one of your Safbridge's aliases. That could have been quite awkward.
Whoops. You've done it now.
Yeah, although I imagine that probably would have ended badly for Saffron more than the crew, but it's fine. But interestingly, we see the true self of everyone in this episode, except for the one person whose true self we never know, which is Shepherd Book. We only ever get little hints. It's I think this would have been a good time to get a little bit of backstory, a prequel to the book. But sadly, 'twasn't meant to be.
Yeah, all in all, this is a great episode.
It is, yeah. It's one of the best kind of episodes in the series for continuity. There's a lot of references to other episodes. There's a lot of setups for kind of future episodes. So while on the surface it may seem like it's a relatively sort of standalone throwaway episode, there's a lot baked into it that we just kind of either can't see or don't pick up on until later times. And yeah, as we've said 4 or 5 times so far this episode, it's just like 50% iconic repeatable lines, which even by Joss's standards is quite high. Usually he goes for like 25 to 30% iconic lines. This episode is like 50%.
It's hard because it's like really serious in one respect because it's all about torture and stuff, but then it's like really funny on the other side because we have like this hilarious stuff going on between like Wash and Mal, but that's also really serious because you're like, this is their relationship and they're supposed to be this perfect couple that we've always kind of been like, this is our perfect couple, our perfect TV couple. They can't be having issues. And then we have like, all like the River and Kaylee stuff, and it's kind of like, but just as a watching, like, I feel like you can just, like, I was laughing out loud. This is a great episode. And like you say, the one-liners and iconic lines that you can carry through and put on a t-shirt if you want are fantastic. But it's definitely, I don't think there's anything bad about this episode that I can pick up on and be like, and like pick at. Yeah, and then I think we're going to go from one of our favourite episodes to like the next one, which is going to be one that we might, I honestly can't remember much from it, which kind of tells you. They're all good, aren't they? They're all good. Like, you can sit and watch Firefly through and it's like a great show, but I think, we've definitely got like the less, not bad, but less memorable episodes, and then like ones like this where it's like, when you think about describing Firefly to someone, you've got that episode with Mal and Wash going off on an adventure and getting tortured. You remember this. So we'll take this moment to thank our listeners, because we're very, very thankful to all of our listeners. And we hope that you're enjoying this as much as we're enjoying watching Firefly and talking about Firefly. You can send us your letters and join our discussion if you would like to. Send those to fireflybits@gmail.com. That's fireflybits@gmail.com.
And join us again next episode for the appropriately titled Trash. Saffron returns to Plague Serenity with a scheme to steal a rare antique weapon from a wealthy landowner. Unfortunately for Mal, she neglects to mention just how she came across the information needed to break into the landowner's home. Yeah, so we'll be talking about Trash next time. Thank you again to everyone for listening to our Firefly discussion and somewhat ramblings. And we'll see you next time on Firefly Back in the Skies. Bye, everyone. If anyone needs me, I'll be in my bunk.